Live, I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. First and foremost, I want to thank Professor Otto Gregory at the University of Rhode Island in the engineering school, talking about the nanotechnology that he's developing, microsensors able to create functionally the digital dog nose, be able to detect chemicals, potentially terrorist threats. Wildly interesting technology. Also, if you haven't heard, the mayor of Fall River was found guilty in federal court just a few minutes ago. GoLocal will have a breakdown on that. But let's go to the superintendent of the Providence Public Schools. Superintendent, thank you so much for joining us.
Josh, thanks for having me.
Okay, so you move up from Florida. You're taking over the school system that Johns Hopkins University ranks as either the worst or one of the worst school systems in the country. You've got a labor dispute, and then to add a little more complexity to your daily to-do, one of your top lieutenants gets into just a mess of trouble and very disturbing. Let's talk about it. How did you find out, and what was your reaction?
Yeah, so I'm still just upset. I trusted someone that betrayed that trust, Josh. I brought someone to the community of Providence that betrayed the trust of the community. A couple weeks ago, I got an email from the Warwick Police Department, and it simply said that they were getting ready to investigate an allegation of Dr. Legge and a situation at the gym. So obviously, I immediately called them to get as much information as they had at the time. At the time, they didn't have many details from what I understand, but they were launching an investigation. I felt serious and compelled to say, hey, just based on the fact that there's an investigation, you need to go on administrative leave. So in less than 24 hours, we put him on administrative leave. Obviously, the tables turned and got a lot more serious this week when we were able to get the police report, read some of the details where allegedly or apparently there's a video out there that corroborates some of the victims' assertions. That was a deal breaker for me. And I immediately asked Dr. Legge for his resignation. I want to build a school district, and you talked about this earlier, Josh. We are in transformation, and we've got to be back. We got to get back to the business of transforming this district. And I just knew that it was grossly inappropriate. It does not represent the ideals of me, my leadership, the district, nor this community. And I could not stand by any further allowing this person to work for the district. So I immediately asked him for his resignation, and he complied.
Yeah, listen, it's a queasy series of events. We had written about when he got appointed that he had an episode somewhat similar back in 2010 in Florida. Were you aware of that episode in 10 down there?
So Josh, I want to be very clear, and I'm not sure if I said this when we first started, I want to be very clear, the superintendent, I'm accountable, and I made the decision. I'll walk you through our hiring steps. So obviously, as you shared, this happened over 10 years ago. So through our hiring process, several things happened. So through that process, we didn't find any police reports, any arrests, anything in the district that was in the form of discipline. In that same district, he had been promoted twice to senior level positions within that district. He had glowing recommendations. I called references who spoke very highly of him. And I asked him specifically, I'm seeing this thing online, talk to me about it. We wanted to make sure that we had done our due diligence. But I tell you what, never in a million years, if I would have known, would I have made it higher. But ultimately, I've got to take responsibility. And we fixed it. Again, we have challenges in the district, but what I want people to know is that we're just as focused on the turnaround. We know that we've got a lot of trust to rebuild, and hope that we're poised to start that process.
Sir, listen, it wasn't this. Sometimes we do very deep, month-long, and even longer investigative journalism. In the case of when we reported his previous episode that took place down in Florida in 10, that was just a Google search. I mean, listen, you don't want anyone's one mistake to destroy their entire career, but it was such a queasy, weird episode, and now being repeated again. I'm sure you've got second thoughts about how it got handled. How do you handle it in the future? Somebody's got a blemish. You don't want, everybody doesn't get the death penalty for every mistake they make, but how do you vet folks? Because it's so critical that people have confidence in your leadership and in the school department, that when something like this happens, it's just, Providence again. Can't we get past any of these things? How do you move forward on the personnel issues and make sure that we're getting the best and the brightest, not the creepiest?
Yeah. So a few things. The first thing I want to make certain that there was nothing remotely that happened in PPSD. So the first thing we did, we started to call principals to see if there's any red flags. And that's preliminary internal. But I'm also going to call an external group to look at his calendar, look where his meetings were. His job was mainly focused with principals and adults. But I want to make sure and be able to assure the public that there was no impropriety with students or anyone else. So we're going to have an external person come in, firm, look at his calendar, conduct interview process. Again, I have no evidence at all, but we want to be extremely cautious and make sure that we look at every part of the situation. The other piece is how can we strengthen our hiring process? We have a team-based hiring process where it's not just me. We've had principals and community members on some of the hiring. I'd like to formalize that process. And anytime we're having significant high-level positions on my team, maybe there's a panel that can also help us and sign off and give us more data in their opinion as well. So we're willing to do whatever we can, to make sure that we're hiring, we're vetting folks the best as we can, but also that we don't want to do it in a vacuum either.
Let's talk about reform. Obviously, we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of that Johns Hopkins report. For some of us who've been around a while, Dr. Ted Eddy, the former president of the University of Rhode Island, and Dan Challoner had done a very similar report, actually much more extensive, as well as with recommendations. And if you go back and look at those recommendations, I think it was 1993. By the way, they had huge buy-in from the community. All major employers were involved. All community groups were involved, and they had 50 or 60 different recommendations. Those 50 or 60 recommendations, most of them are just hanging there 30 years later. How do we, Providence schools, and I want to be explicit about this, are terrible. If you don't go to King, to Nathan Bishop or Green, and then go to Classical, I always make the statement, Roger Williams Middle School in the last 20 years has sent way more kids to the ACI than they have to college. It's not even close. And I know that community extremely well. I've coached over there. I know kids over there. And how do we break this? It's gone on for decades.
Yeah, and I'm not interested in having another report 10 years from now.
Yeah.
That's why I want to just double click on what you said earlier. We've got to get back to the business as soon as we can of healing, repairing, and transforming our school district. I will say, though, I am just really excited with the progress that we've made this past year. There is qualitative data, quantitative data that we're not the same district. We're better, we're faster, we're more agile. We're not there yet. I quote one of my favorite poets, Robert Frost. We've got miles and miles before we sleep, but I am really, really excited with where we are now. That being said, we've got to continue to double down. I don't know if you've heard, but we just invested $4 million in our teachers for professional development. We're going to bring them back 4 days earlier. That's an extra $1,600 that they're going to get to come in and just get better, just get prepared. In the past, we've brought them back 1 day before school starts. There's no teacher in America will tell you that that's enough time to get ready for a school year. So we've reinvested in that. We're going to bring them back early on top of adding professional development days throughout the year. The stimulus money. We have been talking to communities, to students, to parents, teachers, leaders. How should we be thinking about spending this money? How do we reinvest this nearly $180 million in our school? Because I don't want to have this conversation with you a year or two from now, Josh, saying it's only Nathan Bishop, it's only Green, and it's only classical. That's unacceptable to me. So we're feverishly trying to re-engage, build trust, but really show mom, dad, the community that we are a better school district. And it's just so unfortunate that we've got to deal with this situation, because I truly believe and still believe we're on a very positive trajectory.
How do we turbocharge it, though? And I don't mean to be the old crank who's heard this before, but oh gosh, I've heard this before. You go to Hope, you look at some of those test scores, proficiency in geometry, 2%. Proficiency in algebra, 1%. Stay home, watch Judge Judy, you'll get better at geometry and algebra than you will go into class. I mean, we're talking proficiency. We're not talking about excelling. We're talking about barely able to do the core curriculum. This is not taking you to Princeton or Harvard. How do we create that competitive, academic, turbocharged structure where every kid in this city at least has a fighting chance to go have a great career? They're trained for a new economy. They're excited about learning, lifetime learning, and it's not this apologetic, I'm sorry, our schools still suck.
Yeah. I know that there are several things that are just uber critical. And I've been fortunate and blessed enough to do turnaround work around the country. I believe that we had and have spent significant amount of time and resources in condition setting. There are certain conditions that have to be in place for you to turn around a school district. The first thing is you can't do it by yourself. You've got to bring the community, your business partners, the whole entire PPSD community along with that. The second piece is, what we've talked about frequently is we've got to know and understand what we want students to be able to do. So we're creating a graduate profile. When each Providence student walks across that stage, what do we want him or her to be equipped with to be able to be a thriving citizen? And then we backwards map that 12, 13 years. So you've probably heard about an enormous investment that we've made in the K-8 curriculum.
Yeah.
Almost to the tune of about $6 million. That's a game changer, because now with the mobility rate, you've got clear curriculum across every school that sets a standard and expectation. We've just completed that process with high school. So now the district will have a high quality curriculum, pre-K through 12, and that's a foundational piece. The other piece is your workforce. Teachers were frustrated. They were defeated. They didn't feel as if they had the tools to be successful. We're being held accountable, but we're not giving the tools. So giving them the professional development, giving them the boost grants where they can apply for up to $25,000 to be innovative. And I think the third thing is we have to listen. We've been on a listening tour for a while, and we're going to continue to listen. So I have a group of ninth grade ambassadors that directly advise me. I've also got a larger, more broader student group that advises me. And I've also have a parent community council, and they have access to me to talk to me about how that experience is. And then my final piece is you've got to bring your parents and communities into the schools. We've doubled down and increased our customer service by threefold. We've purchased programs, we purchased software to help us interact and interface. Parents can reach out to us 24/7. They can reach out to us anonymous. We actually track how long it takes us to respond to parent concerns. And we follow up with a survey. Did we actually service your request? And right now we have a rating of about 8.2 out of 10. Our goal is to be at 9.5, but after the first year of being around 5.6, there are opportunities to celebrate. So we are doing things differently. And then when I look at the report you referenced that happened 20, 30 years ago and some of the recommendations, a lot of those recommendations stand true today. We've been able to move on a lot of those things. We've got a state-of-the-art program coming to Hope High School. We've applied to be an IB school at Hope. We're looking at Mount Pleasant as our redesign. JSEC and eCube are now wall-to-wall career and technical ed schools. And that's because that's what our students and our families wanted. And then I think the final piece is we've got to get a student-centered contract. We've been in contract negotiations for about a year.
Yeah, I
And
want to go to the contract in 1 second, but I do want to
okay,
go to results. So we used to do, we're 10 years old as a news organization. The first 3 or 4 years, we used to call every single school in the state of Rhode Island, every high school, and say, where are your top 3 kids going? We don't need their names, we don't want to violate, but where are they going after school? In Narragansett High School, it would be somebody going to Stanford, somebody going to Penn, third one's going to the Naval Academy, okay? Other than classical, you'd call the Providence high schools, somebody's going to talent development at URI, somebody's going to RIC or CCRI, the third kid's not even going to college. And we all know, listen, the trades are wildly important and you can make a lot of money as a plumber or electrician. I know it, I've spent the money to prove it. But in this reality, we're entering the most competitive, the workforce is going to be more competitive than ever before after the pandemic. And if I can't code, if I can't think, if I can't learn new skills, I'm not going to be able to participate in the next economy. Where are these kids going to go? The commissioner was on the other day. They were offering, free opportunities at CCRI, and kids can't even pass 9th grade math. I mean, we're 4 years behind. When do we catch up and start creating a force where we've got Providence schools? People don't move to Barrington when their kid's 6. They're moving to Providence for the education.
Not only catch up, but accelerate. And I think that's where the opportunity with our community, with the stimulus dollars, fundamentally, we have to do business different. And it means not only me, but everyone in the organization, having a mirror moment, not looking out of the mirror, not looking out of the window, but looking into the mirror and say, how do I add value? What is my role in this transformation? So what we've been able to do is stand up what I think some state-of-the-art opportunities. We have one-to-one coaching with teachers and principals now. They're getting more coaching and development. We're getting things like support around trauma and mental health services. You may have heard that I've added 21 new guidance counselors to every elementary school. Before I got here, we didn't have counselors at the elementary school, and that really took me for a spin. This year, we'll have that. We're adding 36 new parent community liaisons to our secondary school because we've heard loud and clear that our community want to be part of high school. They want to be part of their child's process. So we want to directly go to the community, bring those folks in school so they can work with us around how do we serve our students better. When students see a familiar face, they're a lot more relaxed. They're going to work on restorative justice and de-escalation strategies. So all of those things that we've been trying to do for years, we're starting to put those things in place. World-class talent. You may have heard us talk about just our Teacher of Color recruitment program. The Rhode Island Foundation has raised nearly $3 million for us to recruit and reward teachers of color that want to invest in the city of Providence. So we believe right now, this is our moment. The stars are aligned for us to do the work. And I do want to acknowledge everyone that came before me. This is not Harrison being the Superman. This is a community event. So folks have done a lot of work prior to me, but I think and I believe that this is our moment. We have to seize this opportunity. We've got great resources. We've got the winds behind our back. We've got a great community, the business community. We've got our post-secondary community. If you know just about many of the students that get admitted to Brown University, they've had some IB experience. They're IB graduates. So we thought perhaps that's a great opportunity to think about the redesign. And I could talk about our schools all day, but I'm just really proud of our accomplishments. And I truly, truly see our future as being a very bright one.
Well, listen, Brown took over functionally most of Hope High School back in the 80s, and it was a cataclysmic train wreck, lasted into the 90s. During that period of time that Brown ran Hope High School, with little micro schools, no one from Hope High School was admitted to Brown. So, I've got a degree from Brown, but they don't always know the answer. Let's go to the teachers' contract. Listen, teachers union around the country, they know how to play hardball. They don't lose. They don't want to lose. I saw Randy on CNN this morning. She's trying to dictate the national schedule on when teachers and students go back to school. She wants a different start date than everybody else does. How do you battle that political union power and make sure that those things that we all know are obstacles, they've been identified for 30 years, that are in those union contracts, get cleaned up and we move forward?
You said it, but you've got to battle. And it's been frustrating. It's been frustrating, I'm sure, on both sides. Teachers have helped us through one of the toughest times in our nation's history. This global pandemic has really done a number. One of the things that I'm most proud of is we've been able to bring students back in person since September. And no, it hasn't been perfect. And we acknowledge that if it weren't for our teachers and our leaders, that would not have been so. That being said, we have to get to a contract that's centered on students. We absolutely want to respect the teachers and the work they do. Listen, if I could take a checkbook out and write a $100,000 check, a $500,000 check for every
Well,
teacher,
Superintendent, listen, this is the most money anybody's ever had stacked up. Listen, let's pay them. Pay them whatever they want, but demand results on the flip side. There's no more joke on this thing, right? What does every employer say?
No, totally agree.
I can't get the workforce, right? You bring people in, you ask them you see their resume come in the door if they came through the Providence school, their resume's loaded with errors, basic English errors. I mean, I don't want to be so formal that everyone needs to go to a 4-year academic higher education experience, but the reality is the workforce, and certainly the future workforce, demands certain ability to read, write, communicate, engineer, think, and love to learn. That may be the most critical element of this.
Yeah, no question. And we believe that we have to have the best workforce. And we're willing. I mean, I've not shied away around tell me how much it costs to get to this contract. We knew that we weren't just going to walk in and just say, hey, now we've got a new contract. We knew that it was going to come at a cost, and we were willing to sacrifice. Now, I can't bankrupt the district, but I am very willing, and I don't want to get accused of bargaining in public, but I'm very willing to cut whatever checks necessary within reason to make sure that we get this. We're not trying to shortchange teachers, because you're right. Our commitment is to make sure that we have the best workforce. That's why we've got the diversity hiring pipeline. And the other piece is we've got to have a more diverse workforce. Right now, we serve about 90% of our students that are children of color, and about 80% of our teachers are white. Not saying that they can't be effective teachers, but all the research talks about having had a teacher of color increases your opportunity, your propensity to be successful exponentially. So you're right. And it's at the end of the day, and I'll say this publicly, I've worked in a lot of places and I've got a lot of experience. I'm not a gambling man, but if I were a gambling man, if I were at Twin Rivers and I had a roulette wheel that had all the places that I've worked and I had to bet on the group of teachers, I bet on a group in Providence. I am so sold that we can do this work. We've just got to get to a better place around a clear understanding around what children need. We've got to lock arms and we've got to get there. And that sounds Pollyanna, but I really believe that we can do that. But we've got to get to a better contract.
Listen, Superintendent, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I know you've got a lot of complexities right now, and I'll tell you, everybody is cheering for you, but there's not a lot of patience. I think there's a lot of folks who are like, either make it happen or move along, because I think it's such a level of frustration. We all know what Providence can be as a city, and you might be the most important person in the future of Providence that we've ever seen at a more important time. So congratulations to you. We'll continue to have conversations with you. We appreciate your efforts. For everybody else, stay tuned. We'll have much more news is breaking. Of course, it's a beautiful day, so there's got to be a lot of news. Stay safe. If you haven't gotten vaccinated, please get vaccinated. Tomorrow's my 2 weeks after my second shot, going out to dinner for the first time. Cannot wait. I don't want to be in an ICU unit at Rhode Island Hospital or Miriam. I want to be out having dinner. Everybody, please take advantage of the science and get vaccinated. You'll feel better. You'll enjoy life better. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.